Says who knew, lads, we can all breastfeed. So that's the new deal, apparently. I know a giant rock starts rolling behind. That's what Rowan just experienced of me running into the studio because we're just checking it, putting things in place.
It's good. I can see you with the hat. Yeah,
that was as athletic, as athletic as I could ever be. 10 seconds, Paul. 10 seconds. All right. Now, like you, I can't understand why the Australian Breastfeeding Association is now moving away from the term breastfeeding, it's in their name, to chest feeding. All of this to, of course, not offend those who, well, you work it out, who this is supposed to not offend. Kath Deves is a lawyer with the Save Women's Sport Australia, and she joins us now. Catherine, again, all of this is done in the height of sensitivities, but surely there's a line where we just go beyond logic, don't we? And you bring out the alternative terms when it's an alternative person rather than changing the terms for all mums.
Yes, that's correct. So with the ABA, they have introduced a booklet that is capitulating to the demands of the woke activists, and it's starting to refer to breastfeeding women as chest feeders, pregnant women as pregnant people, and so on. So it's completely erasing the words woman, mother, and breastfeeding from this particular booklet. Yes.
How does this come up? How does this take $20,000 to work out, by the way? And it seems like it's a click and drag from some of the activist stuff that's happened in the United States. Now, again, none of us want to be intentionally offensive, but there's also seemingly no need for this blanket rule. Is that fair for me to say that there's no need for the blanket change of terminologies?
Look, that's correct. I think what the ABA has tried to do here is to ring fence the issue and to provide a booklet that's dedicated to the LGBTIQ community. However, we see these sorts of tactics as a bridgehead. So once a policy is established, they try to leverage that to legitimise further demand. So basically it has a cascading effect. So once they've got that established, they can then start to rely on that to start to demand these sorts of terminologies be used more broadly. However, from women's perspective, we disagree with that because this sort of terminology, it really dehumanises us when we're referred to as body parts or bodily processes such as, birthing bodies or gestating parent, that kind of thing. Once you are dehumanised, it begins to devalue that person, and it can lead to direct and indirect discrimination that is still faced by women being hidden by using words such as pregnant people.
Well, one of the breastfeeding counsellors has spoken about this to the media, like a few have in the past couple of days, and said this, have to do it, of course, under the cloak of anonymity. They identify very strongly as mothers and value and love the single-sex space, the mother-to-mother space, that the association has always provided. It opens the door to biological males to participate in human milk feeding with babies, and babies deserve better than that. And that's sort of part, I think, about, if you don't mind me saying, part of what you're trying to say here, which is that if we reduce everything to its absolute chemical sort of clinical definitions, we remove the whole bonding factors that come out of it. And as somebody who's been lucky enough to see my wife be able to feed our two kids, the connection's pretty obvious from that. And I'm very cool to say it was about breastfeeding, not about, chest feeding those two kids.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this really matters for women. We have such complicated reproductive lives, and for some women, their journey to motherhood, it is complicated. Like, as was mentioned before, women, losing their babies, endo, IVF, that kind of thing. And to simply just erase women from the conversation, it's absolutely devaluing that process. That has great ramifications for women. It's sort of this bizarre degendering of language, and it's really hiding the role that women play in motherhood. For instance, saying things like being pregnant is not a thing that women can do, it's a thing that people can do. It's not giving women the opportunity to really enjoy that role when things are going well. And we sacrifice a lot to fulfill that role, our bodies, our career trajectory, our years of lost sleep, Many of us are delighted to do that because that's what we sign up for in motherhood. But when you take away that language and just reduce it to a blanket statement of pregnant people, it's just horribly dehumanizing. Absolutely. And I mean, we're not about judging families here that are not, say, the traditional structure like
100%.
mother, father, baby. Absolutely not. But, we shouldn't be erasing the language of women to capitulate to a very small group of activists who are, very well funded and very well connected and are very determined to degender everything in society. I think that, it's appropriate in some contexts, but definitely not for human reproduction. Sex matters in this instance. It really matters.
I'm with you. Thank you, Catherine. Nice to talk to you. All the best.
Thank you, Paul.
Good on you, Catherine. Here's, by the way, a little example about the sort of nonsense that's practiced in the United States, now coming to the Australian Breastfeeding Association, that presumably is changing their name to the Australian Chest Feeding Association. Have a look.
Cancel culture strikes again, especially on college campuses, where you can no longer refer to a woman nursing her baby as breastfeeding. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Ignoring the science, some academics are insisting that by using the term breastfeeding, people are endorsing, quote, a controversial set of values about family life and gender roles.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, boys, Matt Canavan, Barnaby Joyce, Rowan Dean and Richo here. Look, I get it. We've all sat back. We've all watched. We've all supported. But, I mean, the scale of nuttiness here, right? According to the census in 2016, it was 1,200 people who were non-binary, okay? Of those, there was a subset, an even smaller number who were openly trans, okay? We all get it. If for whatever reason that's the situation that's presented, then you change the language. But the idea that you change the language for the extreme, the 99.9%, is maddening, isn't it, Matt?
Paul, the key thing here is that this is a form of child abuse. That's what it is. There is a semantic issue here, and your previous interviewer said it very well about the impact potentially on new mothers and women. But ultimately, it is a form of child abuse because the reason the Australian Breastfeeding Association exists and does such an important role is because breastfeeding is really, really important for a new baby's development. And it is also very, very hard. And I know, and I mean, I haven't had to do it, obviously. I haven't had to chest feed, but I've been there with my wife when we first had kids. It's very, very difficult. And to try and minimise this or degender this takes away that mother-baby relationship that is so important for the development of a human being. And we see this all through our culture now, where children and kids are being taken out of our culture, or the importance of them is being minimised. Children have become sort of like a bit of a commodity that you look to buy or get and fulfil some consumer experience for yourself, rather than the centre of your whole life. And that's principally why I was against the redefinition of marriage, is because we now no longer have a word to describe, in our language, describe the act of two people of different genders coming together to create a life, to create a child. And so we've completely taken out children from our language, our thoughts, and as Wittgenstein said, the limit of my world is the limit of my language. If I don't have a word to describe something, I can't conceive of it.
Yeah. Richo, I want to ask about the Olympics in Japan. The Prime Minister in Japan is copping it because they are going to push ahead with it. The expectation is that it'll be happening in July. 60% of people say no, they don't want the Olympics to happen.